Let's get started, because this is taking precious time away from our guest today. Peter Gamwell is here with us. Hi, Peter. I'm delighted that you are here. I'm delighted that we met a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just in super awe and humbled to have you here and hear you speak about your work. For everybody who doesn't know Peter Gamwell, you might have heard of his work. Peter is a leader in creative thinking in education and organizations, and he's written the wonderful book, The Wonder Wall, and he just signed a new book deal for, and Peter, correct me if the title, Seeds of Brilliance, is that correct? And he's told me a bit about it, so we all need to keep an eye out for the new book. This one is already a joy to go through, but have a look out for the other one as well. But I'm sure Peter will convince you once he starts talking. It's very encouraging. Peter, I want to, you told me so many things I should say as an introduction, but I'm not going to do any of that because you can do it much better than me. Yeah. So please tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here and an honor. And thank you so much for inviting me. I guess a little bit about myself. I was born in Liverpool, moved to Canada, to Newfoundland when I was 22, spent 20 years in Newfoundland teaching music and drama and a whole whack of other subjects. Then I became a consultant for the arts. I would have to say did some interesting things there in terms of fostering creativity movements, largely with the inspiration of Sir Ken. Then I moved to Ottawa, and very quickly I did a PhD and very quickly rose through the ranks to become a superintendent in Ottawa, where I led a creativity movement for 12 years. This was, the purpose of this was to really, to try to flip the model of how we interpret and how we enact learning within our schools and within our organization. So, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. And I'll start by saying this. Look, I'm here to talk about creativity, but more specifically, it's the intersections of learning, leadership, and creativity and their impact on individual and organizational health and learning. And I think probably all of us understand that there is a direct connection. As we reimagine, reshape, restructure our learning cultures, for me, the critical point is this: we need to embrace at the very core of that the seeds of brilliance lie in absolutely everyone. Our current models of education are not built on that. They're built around an understanding of learning as a hierarchy, intelligences as a hierarchy, with mathematics and language at the top, the arts at the bottom, and the other subjects sprinkled somewhere in between. And within the Canadian context, I can't speak for anywhere else, although I think I probably can, do then attach time to those subject areas, depending on how important we think they are. I don't know who thought this was a good idea in the beginning, but I'm here to tell you I absolutely don't. I think it is ridiculous, and I think it's damaging. When an organization places its priorities in hierarchical order over the priorities of the individuals and groups within it, that can lead to policies, procedures, learning realities that if you didn't know better, you might think had been designed to take the natural potential, the creative and unique differences that lie within people and stifle them on a daily basis. And this can have, not just in schools, but in other organizations, a very damaging effect on people's sense of value. It diminishes it. And in schools specifically, it has a devastating impact on many of our young people. As Hanik mentioned, I did lead this creativity movement for 12 years, and it was fascinating. I was very, very, very fortunate to have remarkable people working with me. And the point of this movement was that if we wanted to shift the culture of learning, then we had to involve absolutely everybody within that learning community. So when we had conferences and events, and we did 7 or 8 of these a year, every employee group was invited. So we would have superintendents next to custodial staff, next to students, next to teachers, next to parents. And we broke down the walls of the district to ensure that the multicultural representation was extremely strong, as was the Aboriginal representation. So it was a very, very holistic approach to learning. One of the, and it inspired, because we had so many wonderful speakers coming in to speak to us about thinking things through differently. Seken being one of them, he came over many times. It inspired significant shift in our culture. One of the people who was inspired in the early days was a high school teacher called Rebecca Chambers. And she flipped her entire model of teaching. So when you went into one of her high school classes, you didn't see any textbooks, you didn't see any tests or exams. What she did was she set up a project-based learning model, passion-based learning. She would talk to the kids for the first few weeks about reaching down within themselves to talk about what mattered to them, to discover what really mattered to them and how they could be change makers in some small way within their community or within themselves. I followed this lady's journey. Well, to this day, I follow Rebecca's journey. But I went for 5 years. At the end of every semester, instead of an exam, they would have a celebration of learning where the youngsters shared what they did. I'm going to need to share the screen now. Can I do that, Hanik?
I'm going to make that happen, Peter.
Thank you.
Actually, Verena, can you help me with this?
Yes.
Can you make Peter a co-host?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. There you go. You can share screen.
Am I there now?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, so one of the very first times I went, and by the way, I'm a great believer in collecting artifacts. I think we need to document our learning as much as we possibly can. So for the last 8 years, unfortunately, I don't have time to tell you the story behind it. I collect videos of pretty much everybody I meet. And, but you need to know that when I went to this celebration of learning, none of these students knew me. They'd never seen me before. And I came across this young lady, Fiona. And you'll hear her tell her little story. To you for a minute, Fiona. I'm going to get back to you. For you. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Let me do this correctly. Play. To you for a minute, Fiona. I'm going to get back to you. For you, what's your experience been?
So I've had Miss Chambers. This is my first year at John McCrae, but this is my second class with her.
Okay.
So for my inquiry, I did, these are 2 notes.
Yes.
This was from when I was in grade 6, and this was from when I was in grade 4. So my mom kept these over the years because she thought something strange was about them. So yeah, so in grade 4,
Explain these notes to me.
Yeah, so this in grade 4, I felt like I wasn't strong with any school areas, so I thought I wasn't smart. I didn't feel smart. things I struggled with. So I'm dyslexic. I have a hard time reading, spelling, math, talking, and a few other things that I thought just clearly when I was that age, I didn't know anything about the school system, but now when I'm older and I've learned a lot more, I can tell that the school system has clearly failed me. And that Miss Chambers, I appreciate so much what she's doing because she makes me feel smart. She makes me like remember that there's different types of learning and that just book smart, sitting at a desk, writing an essay, and handing it in on time isn't the only smart there is in the world. And for a very long time, I felt not like one of the smartest kids in the class just because of that.
Fiona, that's wow. I can't believe that your mum kept this. I want to meet your mum. And when did this one come from?
So this one was in grade 6. I felt like grade 6 is a big year. I felt like I had no friends. I didn't make the track and field team, but I'm over it now.
Wow.
I felt like I had no life, and then like again, the spelling is bad, but it says it sucks, and I'd like to kill me. I felt that bad about myself.
And that's just because of the experience that you had.
Yeah, and this was in grade 6. So.
Wow.
I've tracked Fiona now for 5 years. And she has gone on, there's another video. How long do I have, Hanik?
I would say maybe another 10 minutes.
Okay. My point with this is that there are millions and millions of Fionas in the world. As a school administrator, and most especially as a superintendent, one of the most common phone calls I would get from parents, especially parents with children with perceived special needs, is at home, we see all sorts of sparks of curiosity and creativity in our child. Yet the only phone calls we get from the school are to point out the negatives. Why is that? And I would commonly be rendered speechless because I knew they were right. Now, I want to make this clear here now. This is not a blame game or a judgment about educators, volunteers, parents. That's not what this is. It goes back to what I said earlier. It is deeply rooted in systemic reasons. And I'm going to repeat something I said because hopefully in light of Fiona's experience, it'll make more sense. When an organization places its priorities in hierarchical order over the priorities of individuals like Fiona and groups, it's as though if you didn't know better, you'd think these approaches have been purposely designed to take the creativity and brilliance that lies within people and beat it senseless every day. That's what we did to Fiona. I have got hundreds of videos of similar stories. I've also got hundreds of videos of amazing stories of schools, classrooms, organizations who are reimagining because they understand that the approaches of the past cannot be the approaches of the future. Sir Ken pounded that lesson into me over the years, and I am so appreciative. I think I always understood it, but in a previous session, what he did, he gave us the language, he gave us the lexicon, he gave us the structure to be able to go out into the world. Oh, and by the way, the confidence to go out in the world and be that change maker. Because of what he did for me, I was able to take to that system in Ottawa. And because of that, this teacher was able to get the confidence to go in and change lives like Fiona's. I've got about 100 videos of kids who've gone through her class, and they are all remarkable stories. I just want to, I'll just play this because to give you the impression. I said, I can't believe how summarize it for you.
So yeah, it just sucks. It sucks thinking that. It sucks thinking that you're not smart or that you aren't accepted because there is a line, and if you don't fit in that line, then it sucks for you. And I hate that because there's so many kids out there who don't fit in that line.
There's so many kids out there who don't fit in that line. So I'm going to ask you this question now.
Hang on, Paul. Peter, do you want to stay on the screen?
No, that's fine. I'll need to get it back later, but can I stop it for now?
Yeah.
How do I do it? Stop share.
You go
there
to the top
okay.
of the screen. Very good.
Is that okay? So, one of the questions I put to myself many, many years ago is this. It's one thing to criticize the status quo, but how would we reimagine it? So I posed the question to myself, if somebody gave me the authority to reimagine a system from a blank slate, from a 60,000 foot level, what would be some of the critical underlying characteristics that would define that newly branded learning culture? I'd like to put that question to you.
Paul, I'm asking, perfect. So this is potentially new for some of you. This is Mentimeter. So remember Peter's question. If you want to answer it, you can go to Mentimeter, put in the code, it's on top of the screen. And if you post the answer, you will see you will see the answer starting to appear on the screen. You want to ask the question again, Peter?
Yes. If you were given the authority or had the opportunity from a blank slate to reimagine and redesign, reshape a learning structure, what would be one or two of the critical underlying non-negotiable characteristics of your learning culture?
There's the first one.
I like it. Democratic principles, trust. Beautiful. Nurturing it. This is wonderful. Oh my goodness, voice and choice, yeah. Wow. Hanik, will these be saved? Can you save them? Wow.
Yeah, it will be Paul, but the answer is yes.
Okay.
It's good, isn't it?
It's good, and the ideas coming through are campfires of collaboration. Wow. Agency, I love it. Wow. Portfolio assessments. Yeah. Do you think now would be a good time for me to share Jasper's video?
Yeah.
So
thanks, Paul.
So everybody is aware of this. I was asked to go and speak to 300 17, 18, 19-year-old students at a local high school. And I posed that question to them. I posed many questions to them. And by the way, they posed many to me. And their responses they gave me hope. They were just remarkable. One young fellow in particular was so, I can't think of the word. was so brilliant in the instancy of his response. I asked him if he would record it, and he came and sought me out at lunchtime. And this is what happens when you do things like this, because once you've heard it, you'll see why I'm so enthused by it, because I actually think, well, I played it in Alberta, and the next thing I get a phone call from the Ministry of Education in Alberta asking me to let them have it, because they wanted to shape some of their workshops around his ideas. Anyway, he has now since reached out to me, and I'm doing another interview with him. So it's amazing once you give people the agency to speak their voice, how inspiring that is. All right, how do I share this? Where am I? What is it? Oh, share screen. Oh, where's it gone? I've lost it. Oh no. Sorry about this. Talk amongst yourselves.
Seems to be the theme of the day. While you're looking at Jasper's video,
is that it?
did you find it? I just want to introduce, there we go. I'll wait with the introduction.
Hang on, why is this not? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay.
There he is.
So this is Jasper. I posed the same question to him. Here it is.
Thanks very much for talking to me. We just came out of a session where I was talking to the grade 12 students, and I had posed the question, if you were going to set up a school or an organization, what would be your sort of underlying belief systems about learning and people? And you came up with some interesting answers. Would you just give us an insight into that?
Yeah, so if I had to have a top three, there would be one, you should not be teaching what to think, you should be teaching how to think. Because if you just teach one thing, then you know that one thing. But if you know how to learn and how to go about doing something, then you can know as many things as you want. My second one is that your understanding of a subject is more important than your performance on it, because a test is just not really the best measure, because you can be stressed out and things can happen. But if you can have some way to judge how much they really understand it and what they understand, then that's a better assessment of what the student knows.
Interesting.
And the third one is that you should be able to choose what you want to learn, and you should be able to go about, to some degree, how you learn it as well, because everyone learns things differently. Although you can't always learn something in a certain way, but you should be able to learn how it best suits you. And if you can choose what you want to learn earlier on in your life, then you can kind of get to know what you want more and be better at what you're going to do earlier on.
Jasper, thank you so much. Brilliant.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to share with you my 60,000 foot level fundamental characteristics that I think need to be in place to foster healthy and creative learning. The first one is a culture of curiosity. For me, the driving factor of learning is curiosity. And if you want our children to be insatiably curious, then that has to be modeled throughout the learning organization by everybody within it. The second critical factor is related to the concept of trust. What I think we need to do is to set up a culture of learning where people are allowed to challenge the assumptions on which decisions are made and on which learning is made. Beyond that is the sort of the metacognitive version of that. We need to challenge the assumptions upon which the assumptions are based. I got in a lot of trouble over my career for doing that. One of the assumptions on which decisions are based is that there is a hierarchy of intelligences. That led me down some interesting paths because I learned to find out very quickly I ought not to be asking that question. The third, if you can get those two right, the fostering of curiosity and the challenging of assumptions, then I think you it would lead you to what for me is a defining feature of any dynamic, healthy learning organization, and that's a culture of collision. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean where ideas are allowed to collide, because through that wonderful collision emerge new futures. And if there's one thing I think we absolutely must do, is to create new futures and new possibilities for our young ones, especially in this age of complexity. Thank you.
Wow. That's very powerful. I think it's good to, maybe, can you put the three of them in the chat box, Peter? Is that an idea?
Just a second. Yes, I can. How do I do that?
If you go to the bottom of your screen,
yes, okay,
you see
I've got
chat.
it. Yeah, I got it.
And
yeah.
then you can also decide who you want to chat to, add to everybody or to individuals.
Yeah, I've got it, yeah.
And while you're doing that, I would like to introduce, we've got three pupils from Bearsden Academy here. Leah, Sam, and Matthew. Welcome. Hi, guys. You're in the far distance. Give me a wave. Very good. Very welcome. So glad you can join us. And you were given the heads up about Peter's talk, and you have prepared some questions for him. Do you want to start? Oh, I cannot hear anything. You guys are muted. Sorry. You don't. I'll unmute you. There you go. Got it. Oh, it stays on mute. But I know what. There. Yeah. We can hear you now.
Brilliant. So I think my question would be, like, I really like the idea of like creativity and introducing more ways to learn subjects, but for subjects where there is a more sort of rigid structure, for your maths or physics where there are sciences and more like concrete answers, and of course there's different ways of getting to them, what would be your ideas for introducing creativity and alternate learning paths into these subjects?
Can I get your name again, please?
Matthew.
Matthew, thank you, Matthew. I think it's an absolutely wonderful question, and I think the answer lies in the mindset that's brought to that. Over the years that we were leading our creativity initiatives, we featured creative initiatives at every event. We had hundreds of them through the years. Some of those were pertaining to science, some to mathematics, some to, the full gamut of disciplines. And one of the extraordinary things about that is that I don't really have an answer to your question, because I am not a mathematician or a scientist. But what I do know is that when you open the space and allow people to think outside the box, remarkable ideas emerge. That's why my job is to encourage the fostering of cultures of difference, where it's very, very hard in conventional, traditional, status quo organizations to do things differently, because there's an expectation of sameness because of tradition. My challenge to people is actually, I'm going to reiterate your question back. If you could just start in some way to teach, or to, not to teach, to expose learning on a particular aspect of mathematics in a way that's a little different, which allows people to explore rather than to be inculcated, how would you do that? I was involved in as a music and drama teacher for many years, and so for me, because I knew those subjects so well, it was easy for me to set that creative context. Equally, there's a mathematics teacher here in Ottawa who is stunningly clever at allowing the space. If you walk into his classroom, it looks like chaos, but it's not. It's about setting the culture of exploration and curiosity, and actually allowing those youngsters to challenge the assumptions and the assumptions upon which the assumptions are made.
I guess there's mathematics and music.
Of course there is, absolutely.
There's actually, there was a really interesting talk earlier this week about how mathematics can be taught in school, and how much fun it can be.
Yep.
Because it is all around us. So yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think people assume, as you say, Peter, people assume that these subject matters need to be taught the way they are taught, but actually, can they be taught more in a more engaging way and actually more applicable, or showing the how all around us mathematics already helps us to understand things.
And Penny has just kindly put up here, my lovely friend and colleague, Dr. Alf Cole, devoted to teaching maths creatively. And she set up a link there, so.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you, Peter. I totally recommend, I've worked with Alf for 17 years now, and he's absolutely brilliant. He was going to be speaking on 10-10-20 about maths and creativity at TEDx Bath. He's just designed a mirror maze for the Forest of Imagination, but I can send those links and you're all invited.
Beautiful. Forest of Imagination, yeah.
Mirror maze.
Yeah.
Well, we go to the next question. Looking at the time, can we go back to Bearsden Academy?
Yeah, so just from what you're saying, I think we do need to kind of let that curiosity kind of be still there. I was wondering, would you say that it's more school's job to kind of harness that creativity and that curiosity? Or do you think that parents have to be involved with that?
A wonderful, wonderful question. Can I get your name, please?
Sam.
Sam? Hi,
Yeah.
Sam. It's lovely to meet you. So, it's everybody's responsibility. Absolutely everybody. The next book is going to focus very much on the power of inclusivity. The title is Seeds of Brilliance, and it is my absolute belief that within everybody lie seeds of brilliance. In conventional, traditional schools, I'm going to have to say it because I believe it. And again, it's not a blame game about schools and teachers, because this is not it. It's because it's so deeply rooted in the system that's been emerging for hundreds of years, right? That sees intelligence as a hierarchy. And if you're lucky enough to be good at mathematics and language, you can sort of sail on through, but you can also be left with the impression that it's not that important to explore other avenues of your brilliance, right? So it's everybody's responsibility. Parents have a huge role, and I mean, parents get that. You know, when you go and ask parents, and I've done this an awful lot, what do you want for your young people, for your kids? What do you think that they want their kids to be?
Happy.
Who said that? Happy. Matthew, thank you. They want them to be happy. And the pathway to happiness, and again, this is something that I was so appreciative of Sir Ken for always dwelling on, is finding your personal, what is it that sparks your curiosity, right? That's what I loved about, and still love about Rebecca's approach to teaching. She finds out the passions within her kids. You should see some of the, sorry, I've got to be careful what I say, some of the stuff those kids come up with. It is amazing. It is mind-blowing. Why? All she did was flip the model. no textbooks, no exams, no tests. And by the way, it's a negotiated mark at the end. And by the way, there's a wonderful, one of my great heroes is the American thinker Margaret Wheatley, who brought living systems theory into organizational design. And one of the things that she says is this: wherever there's a problem, community is the answer. So it's that concept that it is and especially in these times of craziness in which we live, we have to reach to support each other in a living systems way.
I love that, the word community.
Mm.
If I can say too, the whole systems approach, it's I would be aware of work that Margaret did with Sandra Janoff, who and Marv Wiseman, who Weisbert, who developed the Future Search
yes.
methodology, and that's the same, that it's getting the whole system, what you described earlier.
Yes.
Parents, the teachers, it's everybody in the learning journey, but it's also at community level, sliced across the whole of society.
Absolutely.
Unless we achieve that, we don't solve any issues or problems or get the answers.
No, we don't. No. But when it does work, it's magic. Are you familiar? I would ask people to take a look at this. It's a story. It's called the Surefast Foundation, and it is the transformation of a tiny, impoverished island off the northeast coast of Newfoundland, one of the most desolate places. I can tell you this because I used to be the consultant for Fogo Island, Newfoundland. And the lady who did it is a lady called Zita Cobb. And what a story it is. Should we get the other question from the
Yeah, so I'm just writing notes here. Zita, Peter, you want to put that in the chat box? Zita Cobb, so we get the spelling right. Somebody's asking a really good question in the chat box as well. How do you bring people into the whole community? I think that's a great question. Okay, so in 2004, I was given the responsibility for leadership and creativity. My goodness me, I need another hour. So what we did then is, through these 7 or 8 Lead the Way brand conferences every year, we only saw the walls of the school district as a suggestion and of the schools as a suggestion. Community was absolutely integral. And what we were modeling was, a lot of schools really don't welcome the community in that well. And what we were modeling was, once you bring community in and go to things like Genius Hour, if you set up a Genius Hour project-based learning, very often the youngsters will come up with something that nobody on the staff has any idea about. That forces community involvement. And so I guess I'm going to say this. One of the characteristics I have is that I'm dog-headed and relentless, and that has helped me in modeling this form of change. I might come back on that one, Peter. That sounds intriguing. But for now, back to Bearsden Academy. Are there more questions, guys? This is the bit that makes me nervous. These kids are asking good questions. Of course they will.
I was just wondering where could you learn like real life skills?
Where did I learn real life skills?
Yeah, because I was literally just talking to people in class today, and they so you know how to like use SOCATO and stuff in maths and random things that we don't really know how to use in real life. So we're just wondering how it relates.
I'm sorry, may I ask your name, please?
Yeah.
Leah.
Oh, Leah. Ah, that's my granddaughter's name. That's lovely, Leah. She's a scoundrel. Anyway, I was very, very fortunate. I grew up in a very impoverished area of Liverpool, Norris Green. And I had, my dad was a whaler. He was a merchant navy officer. And I had a mum who, wow, just dawned on me. She allowed me to explore, and because of the way she brought myself and my two brothers up, we were insatiably curious. And so I think that was the grounding that to set me on exploration. She also gave me a fair amount of freedom, which was amazing for the time, and that gave me the freedom to explore things and allowed me, to learn in the way that you just described. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I sort of picked it up along the way because of my curiosity.
Yeah.
So would you argue, Peter, that skills that we're learning in class for the young people are going to be the way forward into this, rather than the curriculum knowledge they're necessarily acquiring? Because I think, because of what you said, the idea of the exams and testing, you have to cram in all this knowledge, but it's the skills that have become applicable and transferable that our young people can take forward. And that's the way into creativity for us in terms of our learning and teaching.
Absolutely. Can I ask your name again, please?
It's Neil. I'm Neil.
Neil.
Sorry,
Yes.
I didn't introduce Neil. Sorry, Neil Miller is not on the screen, but is the teacher, acting deputy head for Bearsden Academy. Hi, Neil.
Brilliant question, Neil. And I think young Jasper nailed it in his three-stage response. And one of the things he said, if I remember rightly, the first thing was, school shouldn't be teaching us what to learn, but how to learn. And I think that's the critical thing, because it drives a curiosity. If you can draw on the curiosity and fascination and interests of the young people, and actually of the whole community of learners, then that will allow learning to take place in an exploratory and curious way, which will unleash that creativity, I believe.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
How can we get more individuality in school? Would that help with the curiosity?
Okay, Leah, you said, how can you get more individuality within schools?
Yeah.
Yes. Right. It's about pushing the importance and power of student voice and choice. I think in my reimagining of the future, okay, I'm going to say this. In the first book we wrote, The Wonder Wall, and by the way, there's a hilarious story about why we called it The Wonder Wall, but that's for another time. My co-writer and I, Jane, we structured it around what we call 3 imperatives and 4 conditions, and maybe this will get to your question. The 3 imperatives for healthy learning organizations, we believe, are this. Number 1, you have to believe that within everybody are the seeds of brilliance. Number 2, you have to flip the model from a deficit model to a strength-based model. Many learning organizations, including schools, and again, it's not a blame game, it's because of this structure that's developed, end up really looking for the problems in kids. Why is that kid can't do this, can't do that? What are we going to do about that? We're going to remediate them. We're going to focus them more on areas of what they're not perceived to be good at. That is devastating. You saw from Fiona's example what that does. Flip that and say, within that kid, within that employee, there is magic. How do we set in place the conditions to reveal that magic? What's going to be important in the learning structure? Now, if you can get those two working in tandem, the belief that the seeds of brilliance lie in everybody, and the flip from a deficit to a strength-based model, I believe you end up with a culture which for me is the most critical of any culture, and that's a culture of belonging and inclusivity. We then asked, what are the 4 critical elements, conditions to put the wheels underneath that? And very briefly, it's this: listening and storytelling. Listen to people and hear their stories. Number 2, make learning relevant to the individual through student choice and student voice. Number 3, move from cultures of diversity to genuine inclusivity. I've worked in many, many organizations, and if you say to them, what's your belief in diversity? They'll show you a binder with a diversity chapter with checkbooks next to it. That's not diversity. Genuine inclusivity is listening carefully to everybody. And finally, a culture of celebration, where you don't just celebrate by handing out certificates at the end of 6 months or a year. You celebrate. The celebration should be infused through the DNA of everything we do. Celebration and appreciation.
I love that, celebration. I think the school doesn't feel like a celebratory environment.
It often isn't.
I love that. Back to Bears Den, guys, we're running out of time. Do you have one more question for us?
Yeah. How would you say we could go about kind of flipping that kind of mindset and flipping the kind of way that we go about right now?
How much time do you have?
1 minute.
That is a brilliant question. Okay, you have to start by working with like-minded people. Do a lot of thinking about it. Do you know what? I don't have the time, but I will say this: if you want to reach out to me and have a conversation with it, I'm not evading it at all. You've hit the nail on the head, because this is where the rubber hits the road. Oh my God, what mixed metaphors. That was awful. But if you want to reach out to me on my email or whatever, you do it.
I can make the connection. That's fantastic. That's a great offer. Wow. Good question. See, this is what happens when you ask good questions.
Yes, it is.
Great. Okay, well, that was a really nice note to end on, because we're running out of time. Peter, you have said and shared so many wise things, and I'm sure that there's more wisdom there if we had more time to share.
No, that's about it, actually. I got nothing else.
Also important, we've got the ideas playground, so if this chat with Peter has triggered any ideas, post them in the playground. We'll catch them. Other people can respond as well. It is there to play. And that was it. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to thank everybody for joining us. That was really powerful. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.